Hello, everyone. It feels like it's been a while since we've done a midweek stream. Hope you're having a good Monday. Hopefully, you've got over that two-goal we conceded at halftime in the week at the weekend. But it was still an unbeaten run that we've got, and we still can keep that 2 goals scoring in each game as this season goes on. So it's not a bad start for us. Thank you for joining us. As you probably saw in our review video we did of Blackpool, I'm going to have limited availability this week. So I thought, why not we do a live stream? I've got a guest coming on very, very soon. He's going to give us a neutral view. But I want to know your thoughts. It's not just our show, it's your show. So let us know if you're currently watching. Drop it in the chat and we'll let you know. We'll do the hellos in a minute. But any thoughts throughout this stream, let us know and we'll debate it. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're currently on 607 subscribers of our YouTube channel. Also give us a like and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. So it's AFC Bournemouth taking on Norwich at Carrow Road tomorrow night in the Carabao Cup second round. And I've got Gab Sutton who's going to join me to discuss this. How you doing, Gabs?
I'm very well, thanks, Kurt. Thank you for having me on.
And for anyone who doesn't know you, Gab, and doesn't know what you do an awful lot for the EFL and the Football League. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and where the fans can find you this season.
Yeah, you can follow me at Gab Sutton on Twitter. I basically talk about the EFL. I produce and present the EFL fan show, and I produce lots of content for various different websites all across the EFL.
And you'll also find Gab's socials in the description, but it's also under him now on the moment on the screen. So at Gab Sutton on Twitter. So let's get stuck into it then, Gabs. It's AFC Bournemouth versus Norwich. This is an interesting fixture, actually. You've got two teams. You've got an AFC Bournemouth team. Scott Parker's going to have very much a remit to try and get Bournemouth back to the Premier League. We've had a good unbeaten start to the season. And a Norwich team back in the Premier League, struggling to score goals, struggling to get anything from this season at the moment. I mean, does Parker go into this as a free hit? And does Norwich go into this thinking we've got to get some momentum from somewhere?
Well, I think from Norwich's point of view, they've obviously lost their first 2 games, but I think you've got to mitigate that a little bit with the fact that it's come against Liverpool and Manchester City. And you look at, I've seen people on Talk Sport talking about how Norwich, shouldn't be allowed to be playing in the Premier League and all that nonsense if they're not going to spend properly, which I think is an absolute disgrace. I mean, Bournemouth you'll know yourself, you've spent a lot of money. And not necessarily, although you've stayed in the Premier League for 5 years, it feels at the moment as though you've not really got much to show for it in terms of the infrastructure at the club. So I think Norwich have invested in the long term, and I think you've got to credit them for that. But in terms of the League Cup, I do think that a lot of managers now see it as an opportunity to maybe rotate a little bit and try some of the younger players. But I suppose from Bournemouth's point of view, you've already seen Rossi, the centre backs, coming in and do very well. You got a couple of left siders in Jordan Zamora and Jaden Anthony who have already had opportunities in the league. So I suppose that they've had those opportunities already.
Yeah, we'll have a look at some of those lineups and we'll try and predict them in a bit. But it is never changing. New era under Parker. It is a squad that's currently riddled with a few injuries. Lerma's final suspension will be against this Norwich game and potentially new players coming in. Rich Neal says, you're doing this stream, so it must mean that Rodgers is currently going to sign soon, hopefully. The thing is, Gab, every time I tweet something about signings, AFC Bournemouth generally drop a new signing about 5 minutes later. I'm not saying they've got me on notifications, but it seems to happen. But yeah, I mean, it is what you're expecting from the lineups from both teams.
I would imagine there's a fair amount of rotation from both sides. I tend to think in terms of selections, you tend to find that players that made the bench in the previous league game are normally a good chat to start in the League Cup. So I suppose from Bournemouth's point of view, you would think that Emiliano Marcondes, Ben Pearson could come into the 11. Leif Davis as well, who came in with some really good reviews. I'm really intrigued. I mean, looking at players like Carl Taylor and Christian Sadie, they've had recent loans away lower down the football pyramid and haven't necessarily pulled up loads of trees. So it's interesting to see that with this Bournemouth squad, you've got a few players that are probably Premier League players, like Brooks, Billing, you could put into that category, possibly even Lloyd Kelly. Solanke's obviously started really well, but there's also a few players that have had to make a massive jump, and I imagine Scott Parker's going to look for a little bit more depth between now and the end of the window.
So the last fixture between these teams then, Gab, was in the Premier League, and it was a 3-1 victory for AFC Bournemouth. It's quite interestingly with that fixture is the 4 goals that were scored in that game. 3 players are no longer at their respective clubs. So we've only got Lloyd Kelly now, who's at Bournemouth. Buendia moved, Danjuma, and obviously Sam Surridge, I think, got the other one. Lloyd Kelly got the goal on the night then as well, and it was a 3-1 victory. But this is going to be a very different game. It's not the heights of the Championship and promotion and playoffs, but it's a Carabao Cup, and Scott Parker said he's going to take it seriously. It's an opportunity to do well, keep that unbeaten run going, and build more confidence.
Yeah, I think that I don't think any manager is going to come out and say we're not going to take it seriously. I think, I mean, I'm caught as a Birmingham City fan. Winning the League Cup at Wembley is one of the best memories I've ever had, and I think that in lots of ways, that's what you're in football for, because if you're a Bournemouth or a Norwich, you aren't going to win the Premier League or the Champions League realistically. So it is that opportunity to win a competition in one-off games. But I think on the flip side to that, I can understand why clubs look at it from a more pragmatic, from a more calculated perspective, and think it's highly unlikely that we're going to win this competition, and therefore we've got a big squad to try and manage. And if you go with your first team again in the League Cup, then what do you do with fringe players? So I think that it's a difficult dilemma. As much as it's a very prestigious competition and it's got lots of history, and I'm sure it'll create lots of memories for teams outside the elite, I'm not sure I would be surprised if Norwich or Bournemouth play a full strength 11.
And we also won the home fixture last season. We did the double over Norwich last year. Let's go back to that point then that you made. Norwich have gone up into the Premier League. You said there was some comments on TalkSport. I've seen them. As AFC Bournemouth fans, we took a little bit of slack in the Premier League in the 5 years we were there. Did we deserve to be there? And that approach that Norwich have taken to that Premier League, are they taking it seriously? I'm sure they are. I'm sure they don't want to become a yo-yo club. But Daniel Farke's going to want to get something out of the season. I know it's only 2 games in, they've played good sides, but he's going to want to put him in a performance tomorrow night to give something back to the Norwich fans, I'm sure.
Yes, I would think so. They've not had the start that they wanted, but I feel they're going to be judged when they play the teams around them. And I'm surprised that there's been this criticism of Norwich, and I feel like people have been very quick to sort of discard them. I think Man City will win 5-0 in a lot of games this season. So I'm not willing to sort of read too much into that, although it wasn't a great performance from Norwich. But I would think that Daniel Farke will see this as an opportunity to bring in players like Kieran Dowell, for example. I think he's someone who can do damage against Championship opposition. He's got lots of drive, pushing on from an advanced midfield role, very energetic player. Players like Jakob Sorensen as well. Probably didn't get as many games in central midfield as he would have liked last year. He could come in along with McLean. I'm expecting a little bit of rotation from Daniel Farke.
Should we have a look at those teams that played at Carrow Road last season? Not many months ago, Gab, but there we have it on the lineup there. You got Buendia in that team. I mean, Skip's now making the Spurs lineup in the Premier League. We've got the likes of Danjuma that's no longer at the club. Lloyd Kelly was playing left back. Carter Vickers is no longer a Bournemouth player. Begovic has gone to Everton. It's amazing, isn't it, how just a few months a team can look quite different.
Yeah, it can, and you've also got to look at Philip Billing. I mean, Norwich were supposedly interested in him for parts of the window. I do wonder what the rest of the window holds for Bournemouth because, listen, your aspirations this season are going to be to be competing with the likes of West Brom and Fulham in terms of that promotion race, and I just look at the depth that you've got at the moment, and I'm not quite sure beyond the first 11, you've quite got what's required. And I think having sold Begovic, having sold Danjuma, I do feel as though Bournemouth are going to need to invest a little bit between now and the end of the window.
Do you have an idea on what the Norwich lineup has looked like then in those first two games, and who you think Norwich will start with potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll probably bring in Angus Gunn, who is quite a popular figure at Norwich because he's obviously the son of Brian Gunn, who's very much a Norwich legend. So they signed him in the summer. I'd imagine he'll get a starting goal. You're looking at Ballymamba. I think he came on for Giannoulis, Dimitris Giannoulis, the Greek left back, at half time against Man City. There's a possibility that Mamba will come in. And then, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think McLean and Sorensen will start in midfield. And then there's the possibility of Josh Sargent and Adam Eade coming into the 11 as well. Eade is obviously someone that's been in and around the first team squad for a while, hasn't quite been able to break through because of players like Timu Puki and they had Jordan Hugill last season. But he's very quick striker, got lots of body strength in him. Actually scored a hat trick against Preston North End in the FA Cup in January 2020. So he's capable of doing damage against championship opposition, even if he hasn't had as many opportunities as he would have liked. I think he'll see this midweek's game as a really big opportunity for him.
We do have a YouTube and podcast sort of popular world here with Chris Rivos in the chat. He says, Gab talking sense as always, probably very confident ahead of this game, hopefully to see Norwich's. He's probably looking for Norwich City to get their first win on the board, but Bournemouth will go there and we will try to do our best to get something from the game. I don't know how many fans are going up there. If you are, respect to the Bournemouth fans that are going to travel up to Norwich tomorrow. Have safe trips and let's hope the boys can do something for you. Let's talk about some of the youngsters then for AFC Bournemouth that could get a look in tomorrow. We know there's an issue at full-back, so Ibsen Rossi will probably keep his place, I suspect, at centre-back, and Mepper might stay at full-back. Right back, that is, because Stacey and Smith are currently injured and ill. But then you've got the likes of Carl Taylor, who had a very good pre-season, did nothing wrong against Chelsea. Christian Zaidi, will he get a chance, Gab, to maybe give Dom Solanke a rest? Because the last thing I'd want to do is lose Dom Solanke to an injury, because we haven't currently got another striker.
Yeah, I think Sadie was on loan in the National League last season, wasn't he? And again, I think this is a big step up for him because not only is this a championship side, it's a championship side that's going to have aspirations of finishing in the top six, and I think the pressure for Christian Sadie will be a lot. So, but it's an interesting dilemma, isn't it, Kat? Because we know Dominic Solanke has started the season in really good form, and he seems to be adding a lot more clinical finishing to his game. But how do you sell the option of the position of backup striker? Because you can't say come in and you'll sit on the bench while Dominic Solanke is scoring 20, 30 goals. So how do you convince a player that of the required quality to come in and be back up to Dominic Solanke when at another club they might have a better chance of being the first choice striker? It's a dilemma, but I certainly think that there's certain areas of this Bournemouth squad that probably isn't quite ready for promotion. But I think in midfield you've got to look at players like Marcondes and Pearson were on the bench. So you've got some areas that are very strong and other areas where, in terms of the depth, you're thinking you'd probably be wanting a bit more.
It's an interesting conversation with that Dom Solanke, and that's exactly where I was, Gab, when Sam Surridge went to Stoke. Not only do I think we've probably improved Stoke, and I thought they had a very good pre-season with their transfer window already, but Sam Surridge probably had the same conversations when he went into the office and said, look, I played bits last year, had about 34 minutes on average, game time, 7 starts, I think 4 goals, definitely made impacts coming on against Wickham to create space for just Stanislas's goal. But he clearly didn't get the message back that he was going to get a lot of game time. And I struggled to see how you can convince a top striker to come to Bournemouth if they're going to play second fiddle to Dom Solanke.
Well, I've got quite strong opinions on Sam Surridge, and I've said this before he started the season for Stoke in quite good form, that I think he was underused at Bournemouth last season. I know Rob Matley on Twitter probably feels like he had the right amount of game. But I just look at the athleticism he has. He's got such a good spring on him. He's reasonably mobile for a player of his size. I think there's a really good striker in there, and I feel like, as you know, he might not necessarily be the prolific goal scorer at this stage, but I feel like he does a lot of the donkey work that allows, kind of creates the pathways for somebody like Solanke to really get into those goal scoring positions. And I look at the games away at Coventry and away at Barnsley, last season. Surridge started in those, and it made a real difference to the way Bournemouth played. But it felt like to me that whenever Sam Surridge played well last season, he was suddenly left out of the 11 in the next game. And to me, that seems a little bit unjust. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Sam Surridge gets on at Stoke, because I feel like he's a guy with a point to prove.
Had a back-to-back games once last season. But let's look at this potential lineup then for tomorrow night versus Norwich. I pre-populated something, Gab, and for the people currently watching, let us know what you think. It could be completely hit or completely miss, but I'm going to share you my pre-populated predicted lineup for tomorrow's game from an AFC Bournemouth point of view. I fully expect Nyland to come in and play his debut, signed on a free transfer. Chris Mepham potentially keep his place at right back. Ibsen Rossi, and I've got Kelly in there. But what I'm going to do actually is change that to Cahill. Had a few days training now, and maybe Cahill gets a run out. Leif Davis at left back. Now, we haven't seen this yet under Parker, but I'm going for a double pivot at Norwich tomorrow night with Kilkenny and Pearson. Brooks right back, Marcondes and Taylor. Sadie up top, Billing and Anthony getting a rest. What's your thoughts on that, Gab? Am I completely miles off, or is it?
Well,
can you definitely see that?
Well, what I wanted to kind of pick up with you there, Kirk, is you've got Chris Mepham, who's a centre back by trade, playing at right back, and do you feel like, presumably, that Stacey must be absent? Do you feel like that's down to the lack of depth in that particular position, or do you have a lot of faith in what Mepham can do? Because I imagine he's quite good from a ball playing perspective at right back. But is he going to really fly forward and overlap Brooks? I'm not quite so sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was okay at Birmingham because we weren't that progressive, and we sat back, especially for 70 minutes. We didn't have a shot on target till about 47 minutes. We thought we had quite good depth at right back with Smith and Stacey. It's just been unfortunate that Stacey's has struggled with an injury and Adam Smith is down with an illness at the moment he's struggling to get fit from. I just think that maybe that Park had more sort of he trusted maybe Ibsen Rossi more at centre back than Mepham at centre back. I don't know, but from his mistake at Brentford on the last game of our season, he's definitely a different player. I can see a different defender in Chris Mepham. Last year, he took risks. He dwelled on the ball. He did it at Cardiff. He did it at QPR. He did it against Sheffield Wednesday. And he did it at Brentford. Every time he thinks about what he's potentially going to do, he generally has a mistake in him. What he's doing this season, Gab, is no nonsense. He definitely did that against West Brom. Don't know if you watched it on Sky Sports, but he was just clearing it rose-ed. Very old school, but it was almost like Parker said, don't think about it. If you don't like potentially what's going to happen in the next 2 seconds, then just clear it out the pitch and we go again.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense. I mean, I've got to ask you a little bit about Ibsen Rossi, because it seems like I was talking to Rob Matley, and he was saying that he had quite a good pre-season, I think, and had emerged as one of the contenders for the centre back spots. But I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anyone really expects him to be, a regular in the first team at this stage. So he must have really come on quite a bit to achieve that.
Yeah, he went to Kilmarnock and had an okay loan from what I've seen. We then went out to Spain for pre-season. He did very well in the pre-season matches there. Came back home, had a friendly against Chelsea. did absolutely nothing wrong, and he's been storming since then, really. Actually, the fans were quite surprised that he was taken out for West Brom. They were fully expecting him to start, but then he came back in the team at Forest. A sort of heart on the sleeve performance from everyone, including Ibsen Rossi, to get a 2-1 victory at the City Ground. And I think what we've looked at, we know Carter Vickers now is pulled up at Tottenham with an ankle injury, but it almost looked at it and went, do we need another centre-back? Cahill's coming on a free transfer. Not sure what the wages are, but we've potentially got now Ibsen Rossi, Steve Cook, Gary Cahill, Lloyd Kelly, and Chris Mepham is a natural centre-back. Whether Steve Cook stays, not sure, but definitely Ibsen Rossi, I think, will play a big part this season.
Yeah, that seems pretty hopeful. And Marcondes as well. I mean, it feels like he's an interesting one because he had a couple of years at Brentford, and I didn't feel like actually for the most part there he was necessarily a key player there in terms of being a first team regular, and I suppose that's reflected in the fact that he's now left them. But he was actually brilliant in the playoff final, and I suppose it might have been that performance on the big stage that really kind of convinced Scott Parker to go with Marcondes. And I suppose with you'd hope that Christian Sadie is going to have a bit of pace about him. So that combination could be interesting in midweek.
Is there any players that you'd potentially change out of that predicted lineup that I've gone for? There doesn't seem to be too much dispute in the chat, so I'm hoping you agree with me on this one. But is there anyone that you potentially switch out, or do you not see a double pivot? Because Scott Parker's very much gone with the one pivot and then had a Marcondes and Billing playing ahead.
I think I'd probably go along with you there. Yeah, I mean, presumably you'd be looking at resting Jordan Zamora and Jaden Anthony because they're big players that play at quite high intensity down that left-hand side. And it feels like it's quite unusual to have two players that are very direct and very quick on the same side. But I think we saw against West Brom on the opening night that combination can do damage.
We don't have a great run in recent years in this cup competition. We lost to Man City early on in this competition last year. We lost to Crystal Palace before that. But I think it was 2018-19, Gab, that we did win a fixture in this cup competition against Norwich City. So if that's something we can take up to Carrow Road tomorrow, that we have beaten them in the EFL Cup in the last few years. Now, I know you're a big fan of the EFL and the Football League. I mean, is there any other fixtures that you've seen in the Carabao Cup that sort of takes your fancy?
Yeah, well, it's going to be fascinating to see what goes on in the EFL Cup this week. I think Barrow against Aston Villa is going to be a fantastic fixture for Barrow, who had only came into the EFL last year, of course. I think Morecambe against Preston North End, you've got a nice Lancashire derby there, with Morecambe obviously on a bit of a high after promotion to League One. I think those are going to be the main ones, and obviously Newport County hosting Southampton on Wednesday.
Very, very busy schedule. You'll currently see it on the screen. AFC Bournemouth kickoff at 7 p.m. tomorrow. And there's a West Brom Arsenal at the bottom as well. Arsenal could do with a fixture or a result from somewhere as well. Well, we got you on then, Gab, and we hope to get you on again at some point in the season. We know you're very busy, but what's your thoughts on AFC Bournemouth's start? What do you expect from us? I'm very much hoping playoffs minimum. But we are unbeaten, but it was a little bit what we saw at the weekend. We saw similar sort of traits last season.
Yeah, I think the first two games were obviously very encouraging. I'd be slightly concerned by the last two games, although you've taken 4 points from them, in the sense that you've away to my team, Birmingham, for 70 minutes. As you said yourself, you were on the back foot a little bit in that one, and then it kind of needed clinical finishing at the end that got you the victory. And then against Blackpool, obviously Scott Parker was saying great in the first sort of 20 minutes or so, kind of limbered over the line towards half time, and then really dropped off in the second half. So those are big chunks of those two games where Bournemouth haven't really been at the level that you'll need to be if you're a side that wants to be seriously competing for promotion. Having said that, I believe Fulham are going to be by far the standout side in the Championship, and beyond that, I don't see too many sides that massively stand out to me. Maybe QPR, possibly Coventry if they can continue that start, maybe Stoke. But I don't see the standard being extremely high in terms of towards the top of the division apart from Fulham. So I believe that it's a year where you can be sort of uninspiring for periods, but still have that clinical presence if Solanke stays fit for the whole period. And you might be able to kind of get away with that and maybe finish in the playoffs a little bit like last season, I suppose, where you had a terrible streak, sort of between what was it, sort of December and March last season. Yeah. So I'd expect Bournemouth to be in and around the playoff spots. I'm not quite sure you've got enough for the top two. But again, a lot could change depending on the kind of business you do in the next few days.
I would go along with that. Okay, we want to know what your score predictions are then for tomorrow's fixture between AFC Bournemouth and Norwich. If you're a Norwich City fan, that's fine. Put your score prediction in as well. We're fine with that. We're going to get Gab's score prediction in a minute. But I do want to use your knowledge again, Gabs, because we're potentially in for a striker. He's not really a striker. He's a winger from what I've seen, and that's Morgan Rogers. He was seen in an AFC Bournemouth tracksuit at the weekend at Dean Court. Now, from what I've seen, done my little bit of statistical knowledge, Bournemouth fans will tell you I like a stat here or there. Looks very balanced on both feet, left and right. Looks like he predominantly plays on the left, very much in the mould of Jayden Anthony from what I've seen. Scored 6 goals for Lincoln City last season, a couple of assists. What can you tell us potentially, with your knowledge of Lincoln City in the EFL, about Morgan Rogers?
Yeah, you've kind of compared him to Jayden Anthony there. I'm not, from my understanding of both players, I'm not quite sure I would go along with that because from what I've seen of Jayden Anthony, he's very good at just attacking the flank and getting to the byline and putting a low cross in. I feel with Morgan Rogers, it's a little bit more, maybe a little bit more nuanced than that. I think he likes to kind of cut inside. He's actually quite a tall player, but he's very agile as well, and he's got good feet, of course, and he's capable of some individual brilliance from outside the box as well. You can check out his goals from Lincoln last season. I think there's a criticism, and I know Gary Hutchinson from the Safety West blog, which is definitely someone you should, any Bournemouth fan should get in touch with for information on Morgan Rogers. There was a sense that he maybe went missing a little bit at times, but the key moments he could come up with some bits of quality. So I think that he certainly, in terms of his individual ability, I think he's more than capable of stepping up to the Championship. But I also think that he's got to be on it 100% of the time because the intensity of the Championship demands that's going to be a step up. So I think he's got the potential, but he's also got to stretch for that next level.
Right. Back to AFC Bournemouth versus Norwich then, Gabs. Thanks for that information, and we'll hopefully learn more about Morgan Rogers. I assume he's not signed yet. No one's put it in the chat. So deal not done yet. What are you feeling about this game then? Norwich versus AFC Bournemouth. What's your score prediction, Gab?
I'll go with 2-1 to Norwich.
And Cameron's gone for a 2-1 Bournemouth. Okay, so Gabs has gone for 2-1 Norwich, 2-1 Bournemouth. Cameron, thanks for joining us. The vlogger, he's gone for 1-0 Bournemouth. We're always optimistic. And I think Sammy went in there as well. We got Sammy now. I think she went for, right, I'll go in 1-1 at full time. Then I assume it's extra time and pens. I don't think it's Charity Shield style, is it, Gabs? It's not straight to pens, is it?
Maybe there's a little bit of extra time. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. Hopefully someone in the comments can correct us.
Yeah, I think someone did say actually it is extra time and then penalties. Brilliant to have you on, Gabs. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you, so I am going to let you go. But yeah, final thoughts, what you potentially doing this week? People can check you out.
Yeah, really excited about the next week of EFL fixtures. Hopefully get to another game. It's been brilliant to be back among fans. I've had a couple of games already so far this season at Wickham and at Walsall, so that's been great. And yeah, so good to have fans back.
Cheers for coming on, Gab. We'll get you on at some point, and look after yourself. Have a good week.
My pleasure, Kirk. You too.
Cheers. Right, thank you to everyone who's currently joined us for this live stream. If you weren't able to join us, don't panic. You can just check it out on YouTube and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We read every comment and we'll reply to them as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also give this video a like. It does help with our YouTube popularity. And you can also become a member as well. It's down on the bottom at the moment. We currently have channel members, Steve Hensman, Richard Riemann, Rich Neal. That's a monthly subscription to help the channel and help us pump out the best content for you throughout the season. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/cherriesredarmy. We've also had one-off donations. You don't have to be a supporting member. One-off donations, everything is appreciated. We've also had from Neil Whedon and Mike Irwin. Okay, so it's AFC Bournemouth taking on Norwich tomorrow in the EFL, in the Carabao Cup second round at Carrow Road, 7 p.m. kickoff. If you go into the game, take care of yourself. We really appreciate you joining us on this live stream. Content this week will be limited, as I said, because I have limited availability, but do check our socials on Twitter at Cherries Red Army. We'll definitely be keeping up with the game on there and we'll interact with you. Hull City at the weekend will be a match preview Thursday afternoon or Friday. And then we're at Hull. Yeah, we're going for the 5-hour trip to Hull City, and there'll be a match day vlog coming over the weekend and hopefully some goals. Maybe Dom Solanke scores for the 3rd consecutive championship game in a row, hopefully. But thanks to the Cherries that have joined us and any Norwich City fans as well. Look after yourself. Have yourselves a good week. Let's get a result tomorrow night, boys, and let's continue this unbeaten run. Until the next video, we'll see you soon. Up Cherries.